Something happened in the regression sessions that Dolores Cannon could never fully explain away. No matter how many decades she spent sitting quietly in darkened rooms with strangers who had come to her looking for answers to questions they barely knew how to ask. It was not one session. It was not one subject. It was not even one country, one language, for one generation of people. It was a pattern. The same pattern, threading itself through thousands of recorded hours of tape, surfacing with such relentless consistency that by the time she had documented it across the 3 waves of volunteers, the convoluted universe, and keepers of the garden, she had stopped calling it a coincidence entirely. When subjects were guided into the deepest somnambulistic state, the level of trance so profound that the analytical, protective mind finally releases its grip on the narrative, a different voice would emerge. Not the voice of the person lying on the table, something older, something that spoke with an authority so vast and so calm that it frequently caused everyone in the room to go completely still. And when that voice was asked about the soul's reason for being here, for choosing this specific life, this specific body, this specific collection of wounds and confusions and inexplicable longings, he did not hesitate. We came here on purpose. We reviewed the plan in full. We understood what it would cost, and we stepped forward anyway. What unsettled Dolores most was never the content of that answer. It was the tone. There was no drama in it, no victim energy, no trembling heroism. It was stated the way a surgeon states what they are about to do before making the first incision. This complete clarity, complete composure, and the particular kind of quiet confidence that only comes from knowing exactly what you are doing and why. She spent 50 years trying to understand what that meant for the people sitting across from her. People who had arrived at her practice exhausted, isolated, medicated, and quietly convinced that something had gone fundamentally, irreparably wrong with them. People who had spent their entire lives feeling like exiles in a world that seemed to function perfectly well for everyone except them. What she found in those transcripts did not simply reframe their suffering. It dissolved the foundational premise that what they had experienced was suffering at all. What those thousands of sessions revealed, what we are going to unseal together in this archive, is a blueprint so precise, so deliberately and lovingly constructed, that by the time we reach the final words of this record, you will not be able to look at your own history the way you looked at it when you arrived here today. That is not a promise made lightly. It is made because the records themselves make it. And the records, as Dolores always said, do not lie. Welcome to Awakening Archives. This space was built on a single foundational conviction that Dolores Cannon spent her entire life demonstrating through evidence rather than assertion. That the most important truths about human existence are not housed in universities, not sanctioned by institutions, and not found in any consensus that the dominant culture has agreed to ratify. They are found in the extraordinary moments when the human mind finally becomes quiet enough for something immeasurably larger than itself to speak. What we do here is not speculation, and it is not spirituality in the loose, decorative sense of that word. We work directly from the documented, recorded, cross-referenced transcripts of thousands of deep hypnotic regression sessions, the life's work of one of the most rigorous and courageous researchers the modern era has produced. We trace the patterns she found, we follow the threads she pulled, and we apply what the records reveal to the specific, urgent experience of being alive in this particular and unprecedented window of human history. If you're returning to these archives, you already know that nothing here is presented as belief. Belief is optional. What is not optional? What the transcripts make unavoidably clear is the pattern. Is the pattern. Once you've seen it laid out in full, does something to a person that no amount of philosophical argument can replicate. It produces recognition, the deep, cellular, unmistakable recognition of something your conscious mind is encountering for what feels like the first time. while every other part of you quietly insists it is always known. If you are new to these archives, then let us simply say this. You did not find your way here by accident. The subconscious, what Dolores referred to with great specificity as the subconscious with a capital S, distinguishing it sharply from the psychological subconscious of conventional therapy, does not waste its navigational energy. It is the most efficient force in the known architecture of the soul. If it brought your awareness to this space, it is because something in what is recorded here was always meant to reach you.
Settle in.
Let the accumulated pressure of the day recede. We are going to go deep today. And everything you find at that depth already belongs to you. In this particular session of the archives, we are going to move through 4 distinct and sequential layers of the records, each one revealing ground that the previous layer could not have prepared you to stand on. We begin with what Dolores documented across the 3 waves of volunteers in the New Earth and Keepers of the Garden, the actual mechanics of the volunteer agreement itself. Not the broad stroke overview that has circulated in spiritual communities for years, but the granular, session-specific details of how that pre-birth contract was structured, what it required the soul to accept, and why the complete erasure of all prior memory was not, as it so often feels from within the experience, a cruel joke played. It was the most sophisticated design feature of the entire mission. From there, we descend into what the transcripts consistently identify as the specific fingerprint of the volunteer consciousness, the precise constellation of physical, emotional, and psychological experiences that appear in the body and the biography of a soul carrying this particular assignment. Dolores documented these markers across decades of session work, and their consistency across cultures, languages, and generations is plainly extraordinary. If you've spent years unable to find a framework large enough to explain the full shape of your inner life, this layer of the records provides one. Then we move into the territory that Dolores found most difficult to convey in her later work. The mechanics of what she called the New Earth, not as a future destination or a metaphysical concept, as an active, present-tense, energetic process that is restructuring the nature of physical reality in ways that are already registering in your body, whether your conscious mind has fully processed the implications or not. And finally, the revelation at the absolute center of these archives, the one that the subconscious returns to with particular insistence at most profound sessions. The one that does not simply refrain the experience of being a volunteer in human form. The one that reaches back through your entire personal history and retroactively transforms the meaning of every chapter you thought you understood. Every layer matters here. Do not let the early ones go. They are load-bearing walls. What we are building toward requires the full foundation. To understand what is moving through you right now, the specific quality of acceleration, the particular texture of the exhaust, the strange combination of deep knowing and utter disorientation that has come to define this season of your life. We must return to the place where your story actually begins, not your birth, not your childhood, the place before either of those things. In the between-life state that Dolores documented with extraordinary detail across Between Death and Life, and the Convoluted Universe series subjects described with uniform consistency a period of conscious, deliberate preparation that preceded each incarnation. This was not a passive waiting room. It was an active planning environment. a space of total clarity in which the soul, fully restored to its natural state of expanded awareness after the completion of a previous life, worked in collaboration with guides, with members of its soul group, and with what subjects described variously as a council of elders or a board of directors, a gathering of highly advanced consciousnesses whose function was not to judge or prescribe, but to assist the incarnating soul in designing the most effective possible vehicle for its next assignment. What Dolores found across Keepers of the Garden and Legacy from the Stars introduced a dimension of this process that fundamentally distinguished the volunteer soul from what she called an Earth soul, a consciousness whose entire evolutionary journey had been conducted within the school of this planet. The volunteer souls in her sessions were not new to incarnations. Many of them had not incarnated in this density before at all. They came from what the transcripts described as higher dimensional collective states of unified, peaceful awareness, so unlike the experience of individualized human identity that several subjects struggled to find words for them, eventually settling on descriptions like a vast, warm light that was also somehow a we, or a place where thought and love are the same thing, and nothing has ever been heard. These souls had, in the language of the records, completed their own curriculum. They had no personal karmic debt to resolve on Earth, no unfinished evolutionary business that required the particular classroom of third-dimensional density. They were, by any measure the soul's journey provides, finished with this level of schooling. And yet, when the call went out, and Dolores was meticulous about the nature of that call, emphasizing in session after session that it was precisely that, a call, an invitation, never a command. Because the prime directive of free will that governs this entire experiment cannot be overridden even by the highest councils of light. When that invitation was extended to souls resting in states of pristine unity, asking whether any among them would be willing to compress their vast consciousness to the narrow aperture of a human life, to accept the full weight of human amnesia, and to descend into the heaviest layers of Earth's accumulated density in order to work from within it. Volunteers stepped forward. What happened next in the planning sessions? This is where the records become almost unbearably dense. These souls did not simply agree to be born on Earth. They participated actively in the design of their own incarnation. They reviewed potential family lines the way an architect reviews potential building sites, assessing not for comfort but for strategic utility. They examined the specific karmic patterns running through ancestral bloodlines. They looked at geographic locations, historical timing, the particular cultural and social conditions that would shape the early years of the life. They selected, with great care, the exact configuration of difficulty that would provide the raw material their specific assignment required. The transcripts in between death and life are explicit on a point that the human mind finds deeply counterintuitive. The challenging elements of the life were not obstacles placed in the volunteer's path. There were tools placed in the volunteer's hands. The critical difference between those two things is the entire difference between a life experienced as a tragedy and a life understood as a mission. And then, the veil. The complete, total, non-negotiable erasure of everything the soul had just so carefully arranged. And the three waves of volunteers, Dolores documents subject after subject expressing from the boot state. A matter-of-fact acceptance of this condition that their human personality had spent decades raging against the amnesia was not cruel. It was precise. A soul that retained conscious memory of its pre-birth planning would be unable to fully inhabit the human experience from the inside. It would observe, it would analyze, it would maintain the comfortable distance of the researcher rather than submitting to the full immersive plunge of the participant. Total immersion, genuine, unprotected, unmediated contact with the density was the only condition under which the transmutation the volunteer came to perform could actually occur. You had to forget in order to do what you came to do. That was always the agreement. And somewhere beneath every layer of confusion and grief and exhaustion, that agreement has produced. You already know it. Here is where we turn the records directly toward you, because everything documented in those pre-birth councils, the specific architecture of the volunteer consciousness, the precise way it was calibrated to function within a reality it was never native to, produces a set of lived experiences so consistent across the thousands of subjects in Dolores Cannon's work that she began treating them not as individual psychological phenomena, but as a diagnostic profile of fingerprint, a set of markers that, taken together, identified a soul carrying the volunteer signature as reliably as a blood type identifies a biological one. The first and most universal marker appears before language, before memory. In the earliest years of life, there is an awareness that does not fit the container it has been placed in. Dolores documented this in Keepers of the Garden through subjects who described their childhood experience as looking out at the world through a window rather than being in it, watching the humans around them engage in rituals of social interaction, emotional transaction, and insensate reality building with the detached curiosity of an anthropologist observing a culture they have studied but never inhabited. Other children seemed to be playing by rules that had been given to them in a language you had not been taught. You could learn the language. You could become fluent enough to pass. But the underlying logic, the shared assumption that this particular game was the most important thing, never quite took root in the place it was supposed to. Alongside this came what the transcripts in the 3 waves of volunteers identify as one of the most consistent and heartbreaking features of the first wave volunteer experience in particular. The sense of profound, inexplicable wrongness. Not wrongness in the world, though that was present too. Wrongness in the self. A persistent, low-grade conviction that you had arrived somehow incomplete, that everyone else had been issued an instruction manual for living that you had never received. The first-wave souls who began incarnating in the 1940s and 1950s suffered this most acutely, many of them. Dolores document spent decades in genuine psychological crisis, cycling through therapists and medications and spiritual systems, searching for the explanation that none of those frameworks were equipped to provide. Because the explanation was not psychological, it was cosmological. The second marker is the hypersensitivity, and we must be very precise here about what the transcripts actually mean by this term, because it is routinely misunderstood as emotional fragility, as thin-skinnedness, as a constitutional inability to handle the ordinary pressures of life. That is not what the records describe. What they describe is a perceptual instrument of extraordinary precision, a nervous system calibrated to detect frequencies that the standard human apparatus was not designed to register. You could walk into a room and map its emotional weather with a clarity that had nothing to do with deduction or intuition in the conventional sense. You simply felt it. The way a tuning fork feels the frequency it was built to resonate with, the suppressed grief in the corner, but manufactured cheerfulness at the center. The particular quality of tension between 2 people who had agreed not to speak about the thing that was consuming all the available oxygen in the space. This was not weakness. In the Custodians and Across the Convoluted Universe series, Dolores documents the subconscious explaining this sensitivity in terms of function rather than constitution. The volunteer soul requires this level of perceptual precision because its work is inherently diagnostic before it is anything else. You cannot transmute what you cannot detect. You cannot heal what you cannot feel. The instrument had to be built to a specification that the assignment demanded. The assignment demanded more sensitivity than this environment was designed to comfortably accommodate. The third marker is the homesickness. Not homesickness for a place within this world, for a quality of reality that this world in its current density simply does not provide. A longing for direct, unmediated communication, thought to thought, heart to heart, without the lossy, distorting medium of language. A longing for a relationship to love that is foundational rather than conditional, ambient rather than scarce, a structural, a feature of reality as gravity rather than a reward dispensed for approved behavior. a longing, as many subjects and legacy from the stars described it, for a place where the concept of causing harm to another being is not merely ethically prohibited, but is as experientially incomprehensible as trying to simultaneously exist in two mutually exclusive locations. It does not compute. It is not a temptation to be resisted. It simply does not arise. Who looked up at the stars and felt something that was not wonder so much as recognition, something that pulled at a specific frequency in your chest that had no name in any language you had been taught. Dolores documented this across keepers of the garden and subjects who, under deep regression, identified their soul's point of origin not within Earth's evolutionary lineage at all, but in star systems whose names they had never consciously encountered, describing their home environments with a grief-tinged specificity that left everyone in the room in silence. And then, at whatever age it arrived, and it arrives differently for every volunteer, the dark night, the complete structural dismantling of whatever identity the person had constructed in order to function within the matrix of consensus reality. This is documented across every volume of Dolores's work, and it is consistently described by the subconscious not as a catastrophe but as a scheduled event, a necessary severance. The self that had been assembled from the available materials of the human environment, the career, the relationship, the belief system, the coping mechanisms, the carefully maintained performance of normalcy, stops working. Not gradually, completely. The scaffolding does not weaken. It simply is no longer there one morning when you reach for it. What the transcripts reveal about this moment is something the human personality in the middle of experiencing it is virtually never able to perceive. The dark night is not the end of the mission. It is the beginning of the active phase. Everything that preceded it was preparation. The subconscious with the infinite. Patience that Dolores marveled that across 50 years of session work had been waiting for exactly this moment of structural collapse, because it is only when the old architecture is genuinely gone, not weakened but gone, soul's actual frequency becomes audible to the conscious self for the first time. The silence after the collapse is not emptiness. It is the first moment of real hearing you've had since before you were born. We arrive now at the territory that Dolores Cannon identified in her later years as the most critical and the most consistently misunderstood dimension of the records, the New Earth. And we need to establish immediately, with great precision, what the transcripts actually mean by this term, because the way it has been absorbed and circulated in popular spiritual culture bears almost no resemblance to what the sessions actually document. The New Earth, as the subconscious described it across hundreds of sessions compiled in the 3 waves of volunteers in the New Earth, is not a future event. It is not a destination that humanity is collectively traveling toward through some gradual linear process of moral or spiritual improvement. It is not a reward dispensed at the end of this and in suffering. It is not a metaphor for a better version of the present world. It is a place that already exists, present tense, fully formed, operational. The transcripts describe it as a completely distinct vibrational reality, a version of Earth that has already completed the transition from third-dimensional density into a higher octave of light, where the operating systems of fear, separation, competition, and lack that have governed this school for millennium are simply not part of the energetic architecture. It's not regulated. Not aspired away from absence, the way darkness is absent in a fully illuminated room. Not because someone is trying very hard to keep the darkness out, but because the conditions that produce it are no longer present. The structure of physical reality on the New Earth, as subjects describe, is genuinely different. Thought moves more directly into form, time is experienced as fluid rather than linear, the body, freed from the chronic defensive posture that dense reality survival requires, functions with a lightness and a vitality that subjects consistently struggle to convey in the vocabulary of the physical world they had known. Several of them wept during these descriptions, not from sadness, from the particular quality of grief that arises when you remember, for one clear and devastating moment, what you gave up, wanted to be here. What is happening right now, in this body, in this lifetime, in this specific and unrepeatable moment of history, is the process of separation. The divergence of two Earths that have occupied the same vibrational space for long enough that most people have been completely unaware that there were ever two to begin with. Dolores was very careful in her documentation of this process to emphasize something that the records returned to repeatedly. This is not a judgment. It is not a sorting of the worthy from the unworthy, the awakened from the sleeping, the spiritually advanced from the spiritually lagging. It is a natural consequence of vibrational physics. Two frequencies that have grown too different to sustain coherence in the same space will inevitably separate, not because one is better than the other, but because the law of resonance which governs energy in every dimension of reality, the transcript described, cannot be indefinitely suspended. The experience of living through this separation from within a human body is documented across the later volumes of the Convoluted Universe series with a specificity that many readers found shocking in its accuracy. The sensation that time has become unreliable, impressing, expanding, behaving in ways that cannot be accounted for by the ordinary demands of busy life. The surfacing of buried memories, ancient grief, unresolved relational patterns, not because something has gone wrong with the psyche, but because the increasing light frequency entering this reality is acting precisely as the subconscious described, as a solvent. Everything that was stored in the shadow is being brought forward for processing, because the energetic conditions that allowed it to remain hidden are being systematically dissolved. The physical symptoms, and Dolores documented these with great care across her clinical work, are real. The exhaustion that sleep does not resolve, the episodes of physical pain that appear suddenly in the body without apparent cause, shifting location, defining diagnosis, the hypersensitivity to sound, to crowds, to electromagnetic fields, to the emotional states of others that intensifies rather than lessens over time. These are not psychosomatic phenomena in the dismissive sense that term is typically used. They are the physiological consequences of a biological vehicle being asked to carry a significantly higher electrical current than its inherited circuitry was originally designed to accommodate. The subconscious described this in one of the most striking metaphors Dolores ever recorded. The image of trying to run a very high voltage of electricity through wiring that was built for a much lower load. The wiring does not fail immediately, but the heat generated by the friction between the current and the resistance is real, it is felt, and it will continue to be felt for as long as the old wiring remains in place. What resolves this is not rest, though rest supports it. It is not medication, though medication may manage its acute expressions. What resolves it, according to every session that addressed this question directly, is the progressive release of the resistance itself, the gradual, sometimes agonizing process of dismantling the beliefs, the identities, the survival strategies, and the energetic holding patterns that constitute the old wiring. The realignment of the physical vehicle with the frequency it was actually built at its deepest level to carry. This is the work of the current moment. This is why it feels so relentless. This is why the acceleration is the particular quality it has, not like speeding up, but like something being asked of you that goes all the way down to the floor of who you are. But here is what the deepest layer of the records reveals. And this is the part that Dolores herself said changed something fundamental in how she understood the entire body of her work. Everything we have covered, the volunteer agreement, the fingerprint of the waking soul, the mechanics of the Earth's transition, all of it is context, important context, necessary context, context. The center of the archive is something smaller than all of it, more intimate than planetary mechanics, more personal than cosmic mission. It lives not in the grand sweep of the soul's history, but in the specific, private, unheld moments of your particular life. And when the subconscious finally spoke to it directly, across sessions in multiple countries through subjects who had no connection to each other, in languages that Dolores had to have translated before she could see that they were all saying the same thing. It did not speak in the language of mission or assignment or evolutionary service. It spoke in the language of love. What it said next is why you are here today, and it cannot be approached from the outside. We have to go all the way in. In the sessions that Dolores considered the most significant of her entire career, the one she returned to again and again in her lectures, the one she said never stopped affecting her. No matter how many times she reviewed the transcripts, she asked the subconscious a question that she had been working toward for years, not, why did this soul come to Earth? Not, what is the nature of the volunteer mission? Those questions had been answered in sufficient depth across thousands of hours of prior work. This question was different, more surgical, more personal. She asked, why did this specific soul choose to suffer in this specific way? Not to experience difficulty in general, not to undergo the ordinary curriculum of human growth and loss. Carry the particular, precise, almost architecturally specific wound that each subject had described, the exact quality of abandonment, the exact flavor of worthlessness, the exact pattern of betrayal or isolation or invisibleness that had defined their inner life since childhood. Why that wound? Why that depth? Why that unwavering consistency across an entire lifetime? The answer the subconscious gave was so quiet and so completely devastating in its simplicity that the room would go still every time, because that wound was not theirs. It was the one they came to close. Let us be very precise about what the records mean by this, because this is not a metaphor and it is not a comfort offered to make suffering more bearable. It is a description of an actual energetic mechanism, one that Dolores documented across Between Death and Life, the Convoluted Universe series, and the case studies compiled in the 3 waves of volunteers, with a consistency that it left her with no alternative but to conclude that it was structural. Before incarnating, the volunteer's soul, working within the clarity of the Bequeen life planning state in full collaboration with its guides and with the Council of Elders, reviewed the energetic history of the bloodline it was preparing to enter. Not just the parents, not just the grandparents, the full ancestral thread stretching back not decades but centuries. The subconscious described this review in several sessions as similar to watching a river, seeing not just the surface of the water, but the entire history of everything the river had carried, deposited, eroded, and transformed in its long passage through the landscape. What the volunteers saw in that review was a pattern-specific, identifiable, self-replicating, a loop of distortion. Call it unworthiness, call it violence, call it the particular species of fear that teaches human beings that love must be earned, safety is always provisional. That had been moving through the bloodline for so long that it had become indistinguishable to those within it from reality itself. Not a wound anymore, a worldview. Not a trauma anymore, a an operating system. No one within the bloodline had ever possessed the vibrational capacity to interrupt that loop. Not because they were insufficient, because interrupting a loop of this depth and duration requires a quality of consciousness that the loop itself, by its very nature, prevents from developing within the people it has shaped. You cannot use the same frequency to dissolve a pattern that the pattern itself is made of. You need something from outside the system entirely. The volunteer, coming from outside the system entirely, stepped forward. And in the planning session, as Dolores documented in between death and life, the soul made an agreement of almost incomprehensible generosity. It agreed not merely to enter the bloodline. It agreed to take the full force of the distortion into its own body, to receive the wound at its most concentrated expression, in childhood, when the defenses are lowest and the impact is deepest, and to carry it fully, consciously, all the way through the human life without letting it corrupt the core frequency that the soul had brought with it from the higher dimensions. This is what the transcripts mean when they describe the volunteer as a living transmutation chamber, not a metaphor, a function. The dense, stunted energy of centuries of ancestral trauma enters the physical vehicle of the volunteer, and through the particular alchemy of a consciousness that can hold suffering without being destroyed by it, is processed into something else, something lighter, something that does not need to be passed forward because it no longer exists in the form in which it arose. Every time he felt the full force of that inherited wound and chose, even once, even imperfectly, even in a moment so private that no one in the world witnessed it, not to replicate it. Every time the pattern said strike back and you paused. Every time the loop said you were unworthy and some part of you, battered and exhausted, quietly refused to fully believe it. Every time you extended understanding into a situation that only ever received punishment, or maintained a boundary in a lineage that had never known what a boundary was. You are not simply managing your psychology. You are editing the code of your ancestral line at the level of its energetic source. The transcripts in the convoluted universe describe the effects of this editing as extending in both directions through time simultaneously, not just forward into the children and grandchildren who will not inherit what the volunteer has transmuted, backward as well, into the ancestors whose accumulated suffering formed the pattern in the first place. The healing and the architecture of the soul's relationship to time is not linear. It reaches in every direction at once, and it is permanent. What has been truly transmuted does not return. There is one more layer to this revelation, and it is the one that the subconscious across the sessions Dolores found most profound, seemed most urgently to want the human personality to receive. He did not do this alone. The Convoluted Universe series documents something that Dolores initially struggled to categorize: the existence of what subjects described as an energetic support structure surrounding the volunteer's soul throughout the human life. Not guardian angels in the popular sense, something more specific, members of the soul's own group, remaining in the non-physical while the volunteer incarnated, maintaining a continuous connection to the volunteer's core frequency. A kind of vibrational anchor ensuring that no matter how deep into the density the human experience descended, the thread back to the original frequency could never be permanently severed. This is why, even in the absolute depths of the dark night, even in the moments of most complete dismantling, when every structure that had provided identity and meaning was gone, there was something. A quality of presence, an inexplicable sense, underneath all the devastation that something was holding. You could not see it, you could not name it, but you could not fully deny it either. No matter how much the grief of the moment argued for the logic of total abandonment, presence was real. It is documented. It was always there. You were never, in the deepest and most precise sense of that word, alone. And the wounds you have carried, the ones that felt like evidence of your brokenness, the ones you have spent years trying to explain or heal or simply survive, they are not what you thought they were. They are the record of the work, the physical documentation of a transmutation that has been occurring quietly and consistently since the first moment you drew breath in this body. You came into this bloodline as its most evolved member. You will leave it, irrevocably changed. That was always the design. That was always the gift. That was always, underneath everything, for everything, more real than anything the density ever taught you to believe about yourself. The truth. Before we close this session of the archives, we want to create something here, in this space, in this comment section, in this particular corner of the digital world, that reflects what Dolores Cannon always said was the most important thing that happened in her work. Not the sessions themselves, not the research, not even the books. The moment when two volunteers recognized each other. She documented this in her lectures with a particular tenderness, the way people who had been through QHT sessions would sometimes encounter each other afterward and experience a quality of recognition that neither of them had words for. Not the ordinary recognition of shared experience, though that was present too. Something older, the particular resonance of two instruments tuned to the same frequency vibrating in the proximity of each other for the first time. This comment section is built for that moment. We are not asking for spiritual performance here. We are not asking for carefully polished declarations of awakening or testimonials constructed to demonstrate the correct level of consciousness. We are asking for the real thing, honest version of your experience, the part that you have not been able to explain to the people in your daily life. The part that these records for the first time may have given you a language for. Tell us which layer of these archives struck the deepest chord of recognition in your body, not your mind, your body. Tell us about the wound you are beginning to understand differently tonight. Tell us the moment your dark night began or the first morning you woke up and sensed, without being able to justify it, that something had fundamentally shifted. Tell us which wave you feel in your history. First wave, arriving into the density of the mid-20th century and suffering the most acute disorientation. Second wave, moving quietly through the world, transmitting frequency through presence alone, often without intimate partnerships or children, because the work required a particular quality of energetic freedom. Or third wave, the new children, arriving already awake, already resistant to the old systems, already speaking a language that the world is only now beginning to learn. If only one sentence is available to you right now, if the weight of recognition has made language difficult, let it be this one, drawn from the sessions themselves. I remember why I came. Leave it here. Let it be witnessed by the archives. Let it become the lighthouse for the person who will find this video at 3 in the morning. 3 months from now, in the middle of their own dismantling, searching the dark for proof that what they are experiencing has a name, a structure, and a purpose. You are that proof, your presence here, your recognition, your willingness to say, I know this in a world that has never had a category for what you are. That is the lighthouse. Subscribe to these archives if this work resonates as yours. Share this record with the one person in your life whose eyes will fill when they hear it, because you already know who that person is. And we will continue opening these records together. one session at a time, for as long as the work requires. Take a breath that reaches all the way to the floor of your body. You came into this session carrying something that most people spend their entire lives carrying without ever being offered a framework large enough to hold it. The accumulated weight of being a consciousness that came from somewhere else, that was built for something larger than the immediate environment ever reflected back to you. Spent decades being told in 1,000 different ways that what it was feeling was too much, that who it was too strange, that the depth it was capable of was more than this world had any particular use for. The records say something different. The records say that the depth you carry is not incidental. It is not a personality quirk or a psychological tendency or a constitutional sensitivity that you have been managing with varying degrees of success. It is the instrument. It is the precision-built, pre-designed, deliberately calibrated tool of a master craftsperson who knew exactly what material they would be working with and built accordingly. Dolores Cannon spent 50 years in rooms with people who had no idea, when they lay down on that table, that what they were about to encounter was not the story of their wounds but the blueprint of their purpose. She watched session after session. Is the human face of a subject who had arrived exhausted and confused slowly changed in the deep state. The features softening, the breath deepening, the quality of presence in the room shifting in ways that everyone there could feel. As something vast and ancient and unimaginably loving looked out through human eyes and spoke with absolute clarity about the beauty of what this soul had agreed to do. She never got used to it. She said so, repeatedly, until the end of her life. No matter how many sessions she conducted, no matter how consistent the pattern became, she never stopped being moved by the specific quality of love that the subconscious expressed when speaking about the volunteer's journey. Not admiration, not pride in the conventional sense, something more fundamental than either of those things. The particular tenderness of a consciousness that is watched from a position of perfect knowledge, a beloved soul descend into total amnesia and navigate the darkest possible territory with nothing but its own encoded frequency as a compass and arrive finally at the moment of remembrance. That is the moment you are in right now. Not the end of the work. The work continues. The planet continues its transition. The body continues its recalibration. The ancestral healing continues its quiet progress through the energetic field of your bloodline. But the longest night of the mission, the phase of complete darkness, of total forgetting, searching for a home whose coordinates you could not consciously access, phase is ending. The veil does not lift all at once, but it lifts. And every time a piece of it lifts, every time a record like this one reaches this specific soul, it's a sim's whole. And something in that soul says, yes, I know this. I have always known this. The lifting accelerates. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are not late. You are exactly where the agreement said you would be. At exactly the moment the agreement said you would be here, beginning to remember what you came to do. Rest in that, not as a comfort story that you hold in front of the pain, as a structural fact that you allow to reorganize slowly and completely. Your relationship to every chapter of your history. Until we open these archives together once more, trust what is moving through you. Trust the body that is carrying it. Just the frequency that, beneath all the noise of the density, had never once been extinguished. Peace be with you on the path of remembrance.